బిజినెస్ అనేది ఒక ఆర్ట్. పర్ఫెక్ట్ బిజినెస్ చేయాలి, స్టార్ట్ చేయాలంటే దానికి కావాల్సింది మెంటర్షిప్. కరెక్ట్ మెంటర్షిప్ లేకపోతే స్టార్టప్స్ ఫెయిల్ అవ్వచ్చు. అందుకే దాని గురించి మాట్లాడడానికి ఈరోజు మనతో ఉన్నారు ఎక్స్పర్ట్ వివేక్ వర్మ గారు. ఆయన చాలా మంది స్టార్టప్స్కి mentorship చేశారు. So let's welcome him. Hello sir, how are you?
I'm good, thank you very much. How about you?
Yeah, I'm good. So startup, at once if somebody said startup, that was considered very fancy, but nowadays people are afraid of it. What do you have to say?
I think yes, I agree with you that at one point, actually the generation I come from, when people said startup, it was seen as a failure. You couldn't do anything in life, so you're going to a startup. But then you're right, it became a very, very glamorous area, because a lot of people started jumping into this. And I think it's the right thing to do, because this is a place where people get an opportunity to solve a problem, dirty their hands, especially the younger generation. And is it becoming a failure today? Not really. I think there are some startups who are failing, but that is meant to be. Out of every 10 startups, the global recognition is that 7 to 8 will fail. Unfortunately, some of the startups did go down the wrong path, and they've set a wrong example. But I think there is so much work to do, and there's such a lot of brilliant work happening by startups who are doing good work. So I would think, yes, there are some failing, but that's part of life. On the whole, I think startups are doing a wonderful job.
If somebody wants to come into this arena of startups, one big question is how much the finance they have to put. What exactly is the criteria? How do they run it? And once funding has come, in future, how to make it successful?
So my own advice to most startups is that I think financing is just one of the resource they need. I think they need to focus more really on the problem. What is the problem they're trying to solve? How big is the problem? Who all have the problem? Are the customers willing to pay for a solution? How desperately is the solution needed? Yes, finance is important, but I recommend to most startups that you should look at developing at least a prototype solution yourself. Don't look at raising a fund very early, because then two problems happen. One, you're diluting too much of your company to somebody. And second, because an investor comes into the organization, they also have a say. And then it becomes a little difficult for the founder to be able to operate in free manner. So funding is important, but I think more than funding, I use this criteria that do you want to go after valuation or value creation? I am of the view that value creation is far more important. And if you've created value, then valuation will happen, funding will happen. So if you've solved a problem, and a real problem, the fund will chase you. You don't have to go running for the fund, because they have a problem. They have a problem where to put the money. That is a bigger problem than what a startup has of who can fund them. And just to share some numbers, we see that a startup typically takes about 50 attempts before they get some funding. But when we talk to funding agencies, they say it takes us 150 startups to find one in which we can fund. So imagine the problem both sides are having. But if they focus on the problem, the solution, the uniqueness of the solution, funding will happen.
Any business formula you want to share, or any startup or business which is now like a trending business, and if somebody can actually invest in it, it will be a success?
I think the future is obviously going to be AI. We are seeing a lot of that today. Anything that is a problem today, I think AI can solve. There was a time when people had to really brainstorm, think hard, what can be done, when a majority of them would get rejected. So I think the formula really is to see how you can use technology, but always say that technology is an enabler and technology is not the product. Lot of times startups think that I have developed a solution and I will now go and sell it, without really doing the homework on the problem. And that is when there is a problem. So I think the formula that I would tell a startup founder who would approach me would be, really do your homework on the problem, really find a solution which is different than anything else in the market. Focus on common problems, because that's where the volumes will be, that's where the large scale will be, and solve societal problems. whether the problems are about agriculture, whether the problems are in education, problems are in healthcare, because these are livelihood. These are problems that we are as a society facing. So if you can find solutions which are unique, scalable, and of course monetizable, money is going to come both from funding agencies and also from a long term in terms of your own business and profitability.
You must have mentored many people, especially startups. One benchmark news or something that actually helped you also understand that, okay, this is the formula, this is where the success lies. What is it?
So I think one of the formulas I feel is about pivoting. This is a language, this is a word we use in the startup world a lot. This is about saying that I started with something, but that didn't work. And I need to be able to change and do something else. Now, what tends to happen quite often is the founder falls in love with his or her product or idea. And they quite often refuse to shift, saying that, oh, the world is not understanding, it will become,
It is unique.
it is unique, I have done so much work, it has so much features, but you need to be able to listen to the feedback and pivot. So I think that has made a difference to many, many organizations. And I can kind of talk about one of the organizations that I've been associated with for about 8 years now. Started off as a advisor, mentor. Eventually, they took me on as a board member. They were doing work in the space of garage software. These mom and pop small garage companies, because they also needed technology 8 years ago, and they started providing solutions to them. Over a period of these 8 years, they've pivoted now to providing solutions to fleets, to providing solutions to infrastructure equipment. So the pivoting is very, very important. As you go along, how are you changing? How are you adopting to what the world is changing to? And more importantly, how are you adopting to the feedback you're getting?
The main role of the investor is very, very important. So how do the investor know whether he's investing in the right startup or not?
So I think the as per me as an investor, having invested in 35 startups, for me the founder is the most important thing, especially in the early stages. How coachable is the founder? How flexible is the founder? How listening ability of the founder? Because to me that's the number one factor. Sometimes the idea will not work, but if the founder is good, they will find an alternate. They will pivot, they will listen, and they'll do something else. That company will do something else. So I think number one for me is the founder. Number two is the problem that they're solving. How big is the problem? Who all have that problem? The number three is the scalability of that solution. That is it scalable? Quite often we see startups build solutions, but they are not scalable. They're very person dependent. For example, somebody says, I'm opening a chain of beauty parlors. Now it's very person dependent, so you're going to have a challenge when you scale it. But when you bring in technology to say that in a different product, in a different line, that I don't need to have so many people. And with AI, I think that's going to become even more and more. So I think those would be the key: the founder, the problem, the scalability, and of course, finally, is the monetization. Because the investor is only looking at a return that they can get. So ultimately, they're saying, okay, in 3 years, 5 years, what's the return I can get? Passion, all that is important. But for an investor, a return on the investment is the most important.
So how much return can they expect in how many months?
So typically, I say to an investor who's investing at an early stage, they should be able to look at about 8 to 10x in 3 to 5 years. That's a good benchmark for a startup investment at the early stage. If you're investing a little bit later, then your return can be higher in a shorter time frame because you are already established.
And finally, one advice from you as a mentor, as a businessman, as a founder, what would it be?
My advice, though it may sound a bit biased, but my advice to startup founders would be find a mentor, find a guide, find somebody who you respect and who you can go to in a safe space where you feel comfortable sharing and you are comfortable listening. Even if they have to tell you some harsh things, you should be able to listen. So that space, find somebody, because that I think in the journey, it's a long journey for a startup founder and it's a very lonely journey. because quite often you can't tell your team members, you can't tell your investors, you can't even tell your family members. So where are you going to go and talk? So that person is a mentor who will be a mirror and who will show you your face and tell you the truth, because that's what you want to listen to. Because sometimes you get too much criticism, which is not useful. Sometimes you get too much praise, which is also not useful. You need somebody who will show you the mirror and tell you the right things, because then you can correct yourself and move forward.
థ్యాంక్ యూ సో మచ్, వండర్ఫుల్ టాకింగ్ టు యూ. థ్యాంక్ యూ ఫర్ యర్ అడ్వైస్.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
సో చూశారు కదా, ఆయన ఏమంటున్నారంటే మన ఎగ్జామ్స్ రాయడానికి ఒక టీచర్ ఎలా ఇంపార్టెంట్, అలానే ఒక గురు, ఒక మెంటర్ స్టార్టప్ బిజినెస్ చేయడానికి చాలా చాలా ఇంపార్టెంట్. మీకు గైడ్ చేస్తారు, మీకు ఇన్స్పిరేషన్ ఇస్తారు, మీకు ఇన్వెస్టర్స్తో ఎలా ఉండాలి పర్ఫెక్ట్ అడ్వైస్ ఇస్తారు. కెమెరామెన్ అలీతో తరుణ, NTV హైదరాబాద్.